everyone, it's Rob. You probably heard the comment by now that Donald Trump said only his own morality can limit his power. Now, you might be a fan of Donald Trump and think there's no problem with this. Folks, it's extremely dangerous. After all, even good men can fall. Now, what's interesting is that the story about King Solomon, 1 Kings chapter 3 and then chapter 4, he's often deemed to be the wisest person who ever lived. And 1 Kings chapter 3 describes him as getting wisdom from God. And we think, well, this is a good thing. The problem is, as wise as he was also corrupted by his power. And he didn't use that wisdom for good things. He used it for his own personal gain. So look at 1 Kings chapter 3 carefully, as I think the author wants us to see it. It begins by saying that Solomon formed a marriage alliance with Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, and took Pharaoh's daughter. Well, the book of Deuteronomy is emphatic. You cannot marry foreign wives. Any Israelite reader reading 1 Kings 3 knows this is not a good thing. Verse 2, the people were still sacrificing on high places, and there was no house built for the name of the Lord. That's not good. Now Solomon loved the Lord. Don't be deceived. Even though he did love the Lord, well, look what it says. Except he sacrificed and burned incense on the high places. Verse 4, the king went to Gibeon to sacrifice there, for that was a great high place. This is not a good thing. Now, while he's there, he falls into a dream, and God says, ask me for whatever you wish. Solomon goes on to say, well, guess what? I want wisdom, which is the ultimate answer. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. That's the best answer possible. And God says, guess what? Because you asked for wisdom and didn't ask for anything else, riches and power, I'm going to give you wisdom. But then we go on, and here's what happens. Solomon takes that wisdom and he accumulates great wealth and power. What's interesting is that many kings look at what happens in 1 Kings chapter 4 and conclude this is a result of God blessing Solomon because he chose wisdom. But it's not. The author's already told us Solomon sacrificed on the high places. Solomon married a foreign wife. Solomon's corrupted. And guess what happened? Solomon's provisions for one day in verse 22 of chapter 4 was 30 cores of fine flour, 60 cores of meal. By the way, you don't have to know what a core is. That's a lot. Look, 10 fat oxen, 20 pasture-fed oxen, 100 sheep besides deer, gazelles, roebucks, and fattened fowl. He had dominion over everything. And guess what happened? Verse 26. Solomon had 40 stalls of horses for his chariots and 12,000 horsemen. Is this the result of God blessing Solomon because he chose wisdom? An Israelite reader would know that's not the case. And to prove this, we simply need to go to Deuteronomy chapter 17. Deuteronomy chapter 17 talks about, guess what? When you enter the land of the Lord God who gives you, you're going to say, we want a king. And God says, guess what? All right, you're going to get a king. But here's the deal. This king shall not multiply horses for himself. Verse 17, he shall not multiply wives for himself. If we read the story of Solomon carefully, we realize the author is pointing out Solomon was corrupt. His accumulation of wives and power and wealth was actually for his own well-being. In fact, what he did, he fell into such debt, he had to sell his own people into slavery. So perhaps you think Trump is a good person. Great. But gaining too much power is dangerous for anyone, including David, a man after God's own heart, and including Solomon, the wisest man of all time.